No, we can't do tea up here, right?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, they can, but y'all do whatever you want.
Sorry, I'm
If you
still
want.
fighting what I've been fighting.
I understand. Hi, Miss Hefman. How are you doing? Let me just see if I can hear your sound.
I'm
Our
fine. How are you?
I'm very good. Our video's off, so you can't see anything yet.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
going to say I don't see anybody, but I see
They all,
myself.
they all see you.
Ah, okay.
Let me turn it around for you so you can see.
Oh, there you are.
So that is a little. Uh, our camera's on this side. Interesting. Okay. Hold on. So
Yeah,
now you can kind of see. Yeah. So
I see you.
the gathering. Uh, they will be at this table here.
Okay.
That's where everything will be happening, and then the crowd will be behind them. All right, so just give us a minute while we get going. Thank you for joining
Okay.
us, and
You're welcome.
we'll be going in a minute.
All righty.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for braving the rain and making it out tonight. I will gavel us in and read the notice. My name is Eli Saban. I represent Ward 7 on the Board of Alders. I have the privilege of chairing the Education Committee. I will read the notice and then have my colleagues introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. Board of Alders notice, New Haven. The Education Committee of the Board of Alders will meet in person on Wednesday, November 30th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the Board of Alders chamber located at 165 Church Street, second floor, New Haven, Connecticut, to hold the following workshop. Workshop regarding the search for the new superintendent of the New Haven Public Schools. Per order, Honorable Chair Eli Saban, attest, Honorable Marcus Smart, City Clerk. These items are on file available in the office of the City Clerk, room 202 at 200 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut, 06510. For accessibility-related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651 or 203-946-8582. Public comment or testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. This meeting may be viewed on the New Haven Board of Alders YouTube page. I'll have my colleagues introduce themselves, starting with Alder Smith.
Honda Smith, Ward 30.
Larry Herrera, woman. Sarah Miller, Ward 14.
Thank you, colleagues. So briefly, the agenda for tonight, we have three guests some from New Haven, some from other places, starting with Jackie, who is joining us over Zoom. Thank you, Jackie. They're going to be talking a little bit about their experience with superintendent searches and some of what they've learned about what can go right, what can go wrong. Then we are very grateful to be joined by Matt Wilcox, member of the Board of Education. Thank you for being here, Matt. And we also want to recognize Reverend Stephen Cousins of the Board of Police Commissioners. Thank you for being here. And then we will, after Matt gives a presentation a little bit about what the Board of Ed's plan is for the search, we will open up to public comment and testimony for anybody who wants to share their perspective on the search. That's going to be taking place over the next few months. So we'll start with Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you very much for asking me to attend this evening. My name is Jackie Heftman, and I'm president of the Stanford Board of Education. I've been on the Board of Education. This is the end of my 14th year. So I've been through several superintendent searches, and I hope that I have some information to impart that is helpful to you. I just lost you. It was perfect before you just moved it. I could see all of you at the table better before. So, yeah. Anyway, I will make my remarks and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. So our current superintendent has been in the district for 9 years, since 2013. She came in as an assistant superintendent, and then when we hired our previous superintendent, she was promoted to a deputy superintendent for the express purpose of grooming her to be superintendent if that person left. At the time, we were very interested in a succession plan, and it has worked out very well for us because she's now been our superintendent for, this is her 4th year as our superintendent. So I hope she'll be with us for many other years, and I need a promise from you guys that you will not try to poach her. So we love her and want her to stay with us as long as possible. I think the first question you probably should ask yourselves is whether there is an internal candidate who you can promote to your superintendent. Because if you can answer that question in the affirmative, you're going to save yourself a lot of money. If you come to a conclusion that there is no one, then of course you're kind of in a position where you have to decide what kind of a search firm you want to use. And there are different types of search firms. There are firms that do national and beyond searches. There are firms that do regional searches. And then there is CABE, which is the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. And I think that they're most helpful just in a small geographic area, Connecticut, and probably not much beyond that. So that's a question that you have to decide for yourselves after, you'll be issuing an RFP, and then when you get all the proposals and speak to all the different people, you'll make a decision on which is the best fit for you. We've found that in the past that we've used a national search firm, and we hired the superintendent who was the one previous to Dr. Lucero, who is our current superintendent. And while they did a national search, it turned out that Connecticut is very unlike a lot of other places. We are a very much a home rule state. And it's a mindset that is not prevalent in a lot of other states. And so you have to be really mindful of the fact that people may not be too familiar with how Connecticut does things. And so sometimes it's better to do a regional search for familiarity with Connecticut and Connecticut law. And then you have to be concerned with, certification in Connecticut and a whole bunch of other issues. But certainly the cost of living in Connecticut is a big factor. And that comes into play when you're, looking for a superintendent. I think that whether you use CABE or whether you use another firm, it's really up to you. But it's going to be costly. At the time we did our last search, which was prior to Dr. Lucero, it was upwards of $50,000. Once you decide on the search firm, they should be doing all of your focus groups with relevant stakeholders. And so it becomes unbiased. Board of Ed members are not involved in those focus groups so that people can feel free to speak their minds. And you should do as many focus groups as you need so that you get your community input, your school system input, and many groups in your community. It's not a long process, but it's a comprehensive process, and part of the process obviously is doing a contract with a new superintendent, and for that I'm sure you need legal guidance. So that kind of lays it out. We've had experience in doing different kinds where we've used national, we've used regional search firms. We had consulted with CABE, and it's just a matter of what you're comfortable doing. But it's a process that really makes you focus on what you're doing in your district and what you want to do in your district. If you're satisfied with how the district is moving forward, I think it behooves you to try to find somebody internally that you can promote, because those are the people that stay around the longest, I have found. The average superintendent tenure, I think across the country, is about 3.5 years. And that's just not enough time to be successful in implementing any kind of a system where you're going to get positive results and move your district forward. I think it's a shame that Connecticut only offers a 3-year contract by law. It might be something that we as boards of education should try to politic our state legislators to change, because it's just too much of a revolving door, and it is a tremendously negative impact on districts when superintendents come and go. So I mean, Dr. Lucero is well known in the community, mostly because she's had 9 years here and everybody knows her, and she's very active in the community, and that's the kind of superintendent that we should all be looking for. That's pretty much has been our experience in Stamford. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jackie. Any questions from members of the committee? I don't see any questions. Thank you, Jackie. We appreciate your insight, Stamford, and have a good night.
You're welcome. Have good luck with you on your search.
Thank you. We'll now move to our next speakers. If you want to come up and start by giving your names and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Maria Martinez, New London, Connecticut. Lauren Anderson, 946 Elm Street. Good to see you all. Okay,
So I didn't actually realize, it's funny that we were a team for this until right now, until we were coming in, so this is great. So I am Marina Martinez, was on the Board of Education in New London for 3 terms, so 6 years, it's the equivalent there. And I was the chair during the search that we'll be talking about mainly here. But just to give a little bit of background, when I in 13 started on the Board of Ed, we were under state supervision. And I say that because the first search that I was involved with, we had a firm, but like I said, it was everything that we did was under state supervision. We had a firm, and so when I first started, we had a superintendent. His contract was not renewed, and so within our first search, the firm that we contracted with, we ended up with the superintendent that we needed to go back on the contract because of a background check that wasn't correctly perhaps done, or I don't know, done, or just there were issues with the candidate that we had selected. So that made us very cautious, obviously, and we got a superintendent that was, I guess, sought out for us by the special master that we had at the time. And then when he left, we were starting on square one with the search, and we decided not to go with a firm. We wanted to make sure that we had our hands in the entire process from the very beginning, and we were going to do this on our own. You can feel free to jump in anytime you want. So this is back in 2017, so we might be a little bit rusty on details here. We looked for a committee or superintendent search that was a committee that was as diverse as we could to represent all sectors of our community. It was very important to us, as I'm sure for you, that the community felt that we were involving all stakeholders and that we were taking all viewpoints into account. So once our committee was set, here's our process a bit of, I think one main thing was, what is the job description? What are we looking for? It was HR, obviously, was taking care of, lots of the legwork here for us. We had our board members, we had teachers, principals, community members, I'm sure different political parties and all of that to try to round out. I can't remember why, Lauren, I don't know if you remember, we did not have a student on the search, and I do remember that being an important voice that we always wanted to keep on the forefront. So I can't recall of like how we did that. I'm not sure if just being aware of topics that tended to come up, and yeah, I'm not quite sure.
I think I remember the decision being that there was kind of a real interest in having students participate, give feedback, but not necessarily be voting in official members of the search committee.
Because of legalities?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So once the position was posted, and also another reason of, I think, not going with CAVE is that we felt that the other searches that were going on in the state of Connecticut would be using the same pool of candidates if we were going with CAVE. So once the position was posted, we posted the job description, and part of the application was a draft diversity statement that the applicants needed to respond to. And so that was a part of the package that was very important to us, is making sure that we would have candidates that would be able to respond to our diverse community. I think we are, if the numbers are still the same, I've been out for a couple of years, but if the numbers are still the same, I think it was 80% students of color and 80% free and reduced lunch, over 50% Latinx students. And so we wanted to make sure that the candidates understood our population and our needs. From the applications that we got back, HR went through and made sure that they met minimum requirements before it went to the committee. Once those were vetted, they came to the committee. and we reviewed and discussed it. Lauren, do you want to talk about that first stage? No. Okay. So I just collected some information. So at that stage, it was whittled down to, I don't know if we went down to like 11, 12, and then it was farther worked down to our final 3 applicants, which we brought in for interviews and a performance task, which had to do with giving the applicants New London Public School goals as well as state goals. So measurable, something measurable that we were seeking, and having them develop a presentation for the committee. So it was a good involved process. We had questions that we spent a good amount of time developing as a cohort and ensuring that we had everyone's input as far as what are the needs of our community. Once from those 3 candidates, we were down to 2 candidates. And at that point, we selected a smaller group, 5, I believe 5 individuals from our larger committee that went to the sites of the to their home schools and took tours, interviewed their staff, and I found that to be a really helpful part of the process, just to be in person and without the candidates in the space being able to speak to the staff and openly ask questions about what it was like to work with them, what were their goals, what were their accomplishments, and so on, and then particulars about New London's goals and how they thought those candidates might react to our situations. And at some point from there, I wrote a piece for the paper about the process for the community. I thought it was really important for our community to be aware of how it all played out, how the process that we went through, because there was obviously some hesitation from some challenges that I mentioned that we had in the past in the search. And we selected one, don't remember if we had a community meet and greet. Probably it had to be, it was posted prior to the board vote, and then but right after the vote, at some point we had a meet and greet with our new superintendent, and I think that was in 2018.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And she is still there, which is a really good outcome for a search. Obviously, the one that you want is one that gets you a long-term and committed member of the search. And obviously some of the district. Some of the things that Myrna mentioned are not really possible if your pool of candidates and finalists extends beyond your region, right? Something like the site visits, that's an easier thing to do because the finalists in this case were regionally situated in ways that the team of people could get there, but
yeah, and that just worked out that way. That's not what we had. We really wanted our search to be national, just open to all of the wherever the best candidate might come from. But yes, the 2 finalists were from Connecticut.
And I guess I can just add, so it might seem a little confusing, like I was on the search committee in New London because I was at the time a member of the education department at Connecticut College, which is in New London. So I was one of the sort of people pulled together to represent different bodies of knowledge and constituencies. My own background, I was a teacher. I was a teacher educator for many years. I did research in Los Angeles schools on a large multi-method project that looked at the hiring, career development, and retention of teachers in that district. And then after my graduate work, worked in Chicago on a project that looked at similarly the sort of hiring practices of the Chicago public school system for principals, and to some extent, the kind of climate that was set from the top down and the way that the processes for attracting candidates and then assessing their quality and hiring, contributed to a culture of leadership in the district itself. So there are things about actual interviewing and the way you might build a search process. That was some of my, I think, involvement. Like there are ways to interview that can often yield much more helpful information. One of the kind of gold standards of hiring practices is to engage in something, some of you might be familiar with it, called behavioral interviewing, where what you're actually asking candidates to do is to really speak to specific situations that they've been in, and you can think about what those might be or what you might want to ask about at the moment. Like, for example, now, tell us about a time when a family has challenged content in your district. How did you handle that? What was the specific set of steps that you, as the leader in the position that you were in, took to get somebody to talk beyond the sort of like general platitudes to the real way that they do their kind of job? And so some of that was embedded in the parts of the process that Myrna spoke to. And I do think the question of whether to, hire a search firm or not, I think New London was a really particular situation. I think good search firms are very much worth the money that you invest in them, because they can help you build the kind of pool that you need and want for your search. And in some ways, I think it would be a challenge for New Haven to do a superintendent search without the support of a consultancy. What that looks like can take different shapes, and I think we'll probably hear a little bit more about that. But then the component pieces of the process, there are things, and behavioral interviewing would just be one example that you would kind of be hoping to see a search firm come forward with if they were going to support you in your process, because those are the ways that you really get specific information about the degree to which a candidate is a match to what you know that your home community most needs. I do think in the case of New London, what was very helpful about having the diversity statement be part of the initial job materials is that you immediately eliminate people who aren't going to write one and take it seriously. And so there are ways that you can also trim your own work as a committee by establishing a process that weeds out candidates who are not going to be the absolute most serious candidates for you as a community. But those are the things too that I think a search firm of quality can help you with. And if they respond to an RFP and they're giving you a description of a process, there are things to look for in that process that would kind of be most meaningful in a place like New Haven.
Just to say another part of your involvement, of course, that professional background, but I think also you worked with grassroots organizations in the community, like New London Parent Advocates, and did you work with Hearing Aid Voices as well? Yeah. And so that's another way of getting that youth voice in, is that you had intimately been a part of what are their campaigns and bringing that piece to our committee.
And doing a search doing a search well takes a lot of time, and I think the question of like the composition of a committee is actually a really crucial thing. Like, we had a wonderful committee of people who represented a whole bunch of different constituencies without being an overly large group, and that group had rapport and respect for each other, so that everyone kind of at the table in the process really understood that even if there wasn't agreement on all things, there was agreement about what we were there to do and how we were meant to do it for the best outcome for New London's kids. So.
Great, thank you. Any members of the committee? Alder Smith.
Thank you both for coming. Listening to your testimony and talking about stakeholders, I'm wondering how much input did you have from the teachers, because that's a very crucial stakeholder, along with the parents are crucial stakeholders in here. And I think having the input of the teachers and parents is the most important part of it, along with the community, to make sure that we do choose the right superintendent, because that superintendent has to fit all grounds. So my question to you is, how much input that you have from those different groups in which that I just named?
The president of the teachers union was part of the committee, and I don't remember if another teacher was, but we definitely had a very involved parent who's now on the Board of Education, who's also on the committee.
There was a teacher as well on
There was another
the
teacher.
schedule.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yep. So we had 2 teachers and a parent on the,
How many on the committee had in total?
I don't remember. I was trying to remember that today. I don't.
9.
9, was it? Okay. And I was actually a parent at the time of a student from the school district as well.
Thank you.
That's it.
All correct.
Thank you for coming. That is something that brought my attention that you mentioned it, that I noticed in the past. They make all of the research and decisions without updating information. And one of the main that you mentioned it, that is how is the diversity population new data is there. I think it's crucial to focus on that because what happened 10 years ago is not the same population that we have now. The needs are different. The mentality that has to be accountable for that. And the committee try to make sure that it's also diverse, not only in the culture, but in the different neighborhoods that can accomplish the committee on that was mentioned. That involvement of the parents and the teacher is crucial, yes, but it's also crucial to work with real numbers. What represents today.
You're right. I think that was a real benefit for us in doing it on our own at this time around because it wasn't a search firm or CABE using their, not to put that process down, but it wasn't their stock. It was us creating it at that moment of what are the needs of our district and what are we highlighting as our goals, our urgencies, and making sure that job posting was this is what we're looking for right now. So yeah.
Oh yeah, please, thank you, keep it that, and that, as I think is really important. Here is a lot of the association, even that.
Yeah.
So that you can focus on that.
I also do think that the performance task for the finalists asked the candidates to engage with up-to-date data on the district and to construct a presentation that reflected the sense they made of that in relationship to the district's goals and the state goals. And so it was both like the content and the preparedness of the candidates that mattered, but it was also the degree to which the candidate in presenting it could demonstrate authentically comfort in kind of talking and responding even to questions on the fly about very particular issues around, like, let's say, multilingualism, which might not have been something that stood out in the candidate's track record, or something that did, but when you actually hear somebody talk about it, you can kind of, the bottom either falls out or you're shored up and you get a really good sense. So it's trying to figure out what's a performance task that's specific enough, but also dynamic enough to give you a bunch of information about a candidate, both in terms of their kind of content knowledge, their analytical knowledge, but also their capacity to communicate to a diverse group of people and to answer things on the fly in ways that reflect cultural responsiveness, an understanding of things that were part of our criteria at the time.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. I'm very sorry to hear that. Because it makes a huge difference to understand the person in charge. There's not only understand the responsibilities inside the school, but the environment. My son was graduate in Bishop College, New London, so was back for 4 years. So I know that maybe there also like New Haven, they are a beautiful little town that has no, it's like a that 3 stores. In New Haven, that's what we have here. So please keep focusing on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Elder Gilbert.
First of all, thank you for writing the article. Thank you for coming, and thank you for writing the article. It came out at a time when we had a somewhat less successful process here and kind of made the rounds, and it's always stuck in my head as a real example to learn from. So I appreciate you coming and helping us learn from this now that we have a chance to try to get it a little better this time.
Thank you for inviting us.
So my question is, if you could talk about sort of what feedback you received from the community on the process you used, and how that has played out over time. Do people still seem to be happy, and why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think we got really positive. I think just the communication that was there, like I said, spelling out the process for the community. I know that the day board also had a really positive piece. And having I mean, I think it's typical for the community. I've attended several of them of presentations of the new superintendent, but I think it was a very positive process altogether, just having that communication back and forth and allowing people to participate. And how it's worked out right now, I mean, well, I've not been a part of the board for a number of years, so I can't speak to it to that level, but I know that twice during the recent past, because since COVID, that the New London Public Schools has had a new preschool program, and it's been like an exemplary one that CABE has shared in their newsletter. And so, you know, there are things moving, and, you know, can't evaluate the district.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it just, my sense was, yeah, transparency about the process was really crucial, and also transparency about who the search committee is to some respect, and thinking about that as a trusted group of people, and, you know, matters a lot. Like, now it's a little bit harder, I think, in a bigger city. Like New London is also very small. And that being said, it's also a very political place, like New York is. So there are many different constituencies to consider, but I do think the composition of the search committee, coupled with the transparency of the process, and also the points woven into it for people to give feedback, were critical and appreciated. Especially having had a not positive experience prior to that. It was like people were really looking for something that would feel different, which was, in this case, part of the decision to very much handle it on their own and not have a filter through which information traveled. But that would be a different undertaking, I think, here than it is in New London.
You know, looking back on it, what would I do differently? And this is completely hypothetical, like I said, without knowing intimately the details of the district right now. I think one thing that I just personally, but it could also just be my goals, is I would want to have a greater, and we really did work towards it, but wanting to have a greater push on the equity, diversity agenda for candidates. I'd want that to be a bigger portion of it. Like I said, it was a main focus, but I think we could do more. You could always improve, right? And I personally, at looking back, would have also liked to have, I can't remember the details of who were the applicants in the pool, but I would have liked to have been able to interview more of them. But that's what we came up with at the time. So maybe that wouldn't have allowed with what the pool was. But there's just a difference between what you get sometimes on paper and being able to speak to people. And I just, in retrospect, you know.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? I have one question, actually. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you balance asking candidates to give specific plans or specific vision for what they wanted to do with the district, or changes that they wanted to make, versus evaluating candidates based on their experience, their record, their character, things like that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's part of the reason why I said, like, I think that behavioral interviewing is really important, because the best predictor, you know, psychologically speaking, of future action is past action. And so actually having people talk concretely about how they handled things in the past tells you quite a bit about how they're likely to work in similar situations or in different ones, but that might have shared kind of features to them in the future. And so you don't want to focus so much on the kind of imagining what could happen here without actually really talking. I think that's where building the process is important, because you can think about the kinds of, maybe you're not time-wise spending all your time looking backwards, but you're actually asking really particular questions that will give you a more concrete sense based on past practice about how somebody would handle something that you know is likely to happen or unfold here. It could be around something like contract negotiation, you know, like just the kinds of things that we know are part of what it means to having to make really hard decisions. But then the part about like a candidate that wants to come here is not necessarily going to know everything about New Haven, but they should have to do work in the process to demonstrate their willingness to know New Haven really, really well and to make decisions for it, not just decisions that they would make in any context. And so it's definitely, I think, a balancing act, but a good search firm and a good search committee will figure out how to strike that right balance and also make sure that maybe in some parts of the process you're focusing on some of it more than the others. Obviously, site visits, if they could be done, give you an incredible opportunity to just like see even how people who know a candidate respond when asked questions about the way that they do their current work.
I'd say something very similar in that if a candidate, when a candidate is responding to, or if you're asking questions about your particular district and how you would handle things, a lot of the responses, are you willing to do, basically, are you willing to do the homework and look into it? Are you willing to like read the pages and ask questions in the community and all of that? And so it speaks to preparedness and willing to prepare for that. So which is, like she said, a past. Are you diligent? You know.
Thank you. Alder Herrera.
Thank you. This is actually kind of a question or suggestion. In this kind of interviews, I would like to hear, I just become aware in New Haven we had a crisis with the students, they are failing for what behavior or what to do with the kids, I don't know what to do with disrespect. So I think it's a crisis, and that's a question they would like to be a direct in the interview to make it say, what is your proposal to deal with this problem that we have? It's just not giving God grace in class that God they come and graduate. What are we gonna do with these kids? There's no program outside what I was keeping in the school, a special program for them. So I would like to hear you guys found something in that. I think we are in trouble here. So thank you.
I think the question is a bit similar to yours in that scenario is going to be repeated in so many districts, right? Mm-hmm. And so that philosophy of your candidate, of their ideas of how they deal with those situations, it's going to be the same across. It's not going to be so particular to just New Haven. You know, you're going to share your numbers here and how big of an impact it might be, but
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
What's your plan for dealing with reading instruction in your district?
Specifically,
but also, can you talk about a crisis
exactly.
level situation issue that you have handled in your current role? And what were the steps that you took to actually address it? Might tell you as much about how somebody would deal with a different crisis. But you also, if what you know as a district is we have to address reading, then that's the kind of thing that a search committee and a search firm would figure out, like, how are we going to determine, you know, in this search process, what this leadership is going to look like around the question of like reading instruction.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll have Board of Education member Matt Wilcox doing a presentation about Board of Education's plans for the superintendent search. If you could start by giving your name and address for the record. I just want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Matt Wilcox. I live at 1135 Forest Road. So it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
I do have to say the expenditure on the microphone system is much improved over previous times. So thought I'd point that out. It's very nice to be able to hear everybody. So just here to provide an update. President Jacintia Rivera, the board asked me to be here. She's unable to be here tonight. Apologizes for that. So I get the pleasure of laying out what we're up to regarding this. The board on Monday, just 2 days ago, did vote to approve the hiring of McPherson and Jacobson, a search firm, national search firm, to assist with this. We had an RFP process. We looked at several firms, interviewed finalists, and then made that decision. So we're at the point where we've just made that decision and authorized President Rivera to sign the agreement with them. I believe she said she sent that to you all through the chair, and that the proposal from McPherson and Jacobson should be public information, and so the schools should be able to send that out for anybody that would like to see it. So they do outline a process. They have 5 steps to it. Some of the things that I like personally about them is not only that there's a national reach, but we have search consultants, one of whom now lives in Brantford, another who is an active superintendent outside of St. Louis, who are going to be the consultants from this company that will be working specifically with New Haven. The key process is we haven't gone and met with them and made the decisions as to what the exact timeline is going to be, but there is the general timeline is that we really would like to make a decision by the end of March of 2023, and to have somebody in place when Dr. Tracy retires June 30, or as close to that time point as possible. So we did, in talking with the search firms, they said that that was a reasonable timeline, aggressive but reasonable, and so we have a lot of work to do. The next steps will be establishing what the specific dates are going to be for the key parts of this. So the biggest key part of this is going to be the stakeholder input meetings. So we're going to provide a list of stakeholders of various either individuals or types or groups of individuals for the search firm to meet with. They're going to meet with all those folks. We're also, Jacintia did say on Monday, we'll have at least one public hearing on it. I'm thinking there'll be more, but at least one, if it fits into the time schedule. We also have public comment period at the beginning of every board meeting, so people can always weigh in on their thoughts on the process. But as the proposal outlines, the key stakeholder input is going to be pulled together. All the input's going to be presented to the board, and their advice is that it's also public information. So that's one of the things I really liked about them. The word transparency, transparent shows up in many places in their proposal, and that's their advice to us, is to be as transparent as possible. So the other parts of this is going to be, the stakeholder input meetings where they're going to develop what the district needs in our next superintendent. Then there's going to be the process of putting out the application materials, advertising nationally. They list out several places, and they also have a network of 130 consultants and all of them close to more than 900 successful searches they've conducted over the years. And they have that network because, as they point out, the next superintendent for New Haven might not be looking for the job. She or he might not realize that this is where they want to be and might need to be helped into that. So they're going to handle the process of the reference checks, the evaluation, developing interview questions, and presenting folks to us. And like I said, the process is going to be, we're trying to get this nailed down for by the end of March. So the key part right now for everybody is just an open invitation we need to provide a list of stakeholder groups. Some are very obvious stakeholder groups. So for instance, the union leadership of each of the unions we work with, that's an obvious group of stakeholders that is going to be key for them to talk with. teachers, not just the union, but chance for groups of teachers and other staff members, administrative staff members, etc., but also members in the community. So for instance, this committee here would be one of the things that I would be wanting on that list, but also if there's other established groups or ad hoc groups of people that want to come together, various neighborhoods, clergy groups. They mentioned, business community. It's basically, we really want to be able to get a sense of what New Haven wants for its next superintendent. So those suggestions for that could be sent to Jacinia Rivera or to any of the board members. That would be a great next step. Like I said, this is going to be happening very soon, so it's not that we can't add to the list as it goes on, but it would be something that I think in the next 2 weeks we would want to kind of have a sense of, this is what we're going to, these are the groups we're going to want you to talk with. And some of the reasons for that is because then they also have to schedule either time to come here and do them in person or schedule time to do them by Zoom or a combination of both. And so they need to plan for days that they need to be in New Haven to be able to do that. The final piece of this is they do also have a survey that'll be available for anybody in the city or anybody outside the city, anybody that would care to weigh in on this. So there's also going to be a survey to be able to supplement this meetings with the stakeholder groups. So happy to try to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Alder Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. One of my questions will be, when you talk about the public hearing, you talk about the stakeholders. Will your public hearings be in person and not on Zoom?
So right now I'm speaking only for myself. I'm not speaking for the whole board. So I would think that there would be a combination of the two. So Zoom does allow people that might not be able to come to a meeting and spend the time to do that. So I would think that there would be both. The firm has offered to do both and recommends that we have both types. So something online, something in person.
My next question will be, will any of the board members be a part of the search committee, or will they be exempt from being a part of that search committee?
The board is the search committee. So we are the search committee. So, and in the end, we're also the board is the final decision maker on the thing as well. So, that's the search committee. Is if the board is going to be part of things like the stakeholder group meetings and things like that, my understanding is no, it won't be. The idea is for the search firm to be able to use their expertise to get the information about what people want without board members getting in the way of that process.
So why is the firm being hired if the board is a part of the search committee?
So the search firm is advisory to the board, and it's going to be doing a huge amount of the legwork, like meeting with all the stakeholder groups, conducting the surveys, pulling together the information on the candidates, the background checks, etc.
May I ask one last question? So, who will make the final decision of choosing a superintendent? Will it be the board of the Board of Education Committee board, or will it be the firm?
Oh, the board.
Oh.
In the end, and I believe it's probably by law, I mean, the board is the body that hires the superintendent. It's one of the primary purposes of the board. So in the end, it'll be 4 7-member board of votes that would count towards this, plus the 2 student members who have high influence in this. That's going to be the decision group that's going to make the final decision. So this is all advisory to the board for that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcott. I don't want to grill you on anything because I like you, you're a nice individual, and I know you just have to do what you have to do. But I personally, forget it, I'm not even going to give you first opinions at this time. But thank you so very much.
Certainly.
Alderman Herrera.
Thank you for coming. Actually, I have just two questions. One is, how many of the members of the Board of Education are agree that March is a good time to make it official? There's is enough time to make the decision to hire someone. This is a very, very important decision, and I feel personally, it's not personally, just talking and listening all the involvement that needs to be done. And it's kind of hard for me to understand there's enough time to understand and make a decision at the time.
So this is just my opinion. I think there's general agreement that that's what we're going to try to do. But I would also think that if it works out that as we're starting the process, there is not enough time. It's not like we have to, by law, make a decision by then. All that would have to happen is that it just makes it longer before we could have somebody in place, which would mean we'd have to have an interim superintendent for some matter of months. So we were working from Eileen Tracy's retirement date, the end of June, and when we could have somebody in, which would mean you would need to likely have somebody, the selection made by the end of March in order for that to happen. By law, we have to have a superintendent, but we can have an interim superintendent. And in the past, New Haven's had an interim superintendent for more than a year. So, I mean, we could take more time. So.
Oh, thank you. Actually, the second question is in conjunction with this, that is, I just hear some of you guys talk about the issue in some of it. They're glad to say they're very passionate to explore the point of view and the good of the students and the parents. And that for me also make me understand it is too soon to make a decision or you in just in that group of you, seems like it's a big division. And remember, this is a decision that needs to have an impact to everyone, not only a group of people. And I really like what you just say, not making a due date that has to happen, because honestly, in real time, I don't think this is a smart decision to put a date in a decision that you don't know how it's gonna be. So I just, my interest that you guys know, because I didn't see a conjunction in there. It's just a lot of discrepancies to each other, and to rush a decision like this, I understand how many home are trying to get a little frustrated in there. And I start getting like a little anxiety too, because how many parents they really are involved. So,
right. So I appreciate that. And so this isn't, the last time New Haven did a search was not the last time New Haven hired a superintendent. So the last time we hired a superintendent was when the board hired Eileen Tracy, who was our interim. And while we did have a process that it was a unanimous decision of the people of the board to hire her for that process, we did, even though it was the beginning of COVID, did have a process of bringing in input from anybody that wanted to provide email input. We had more than 1,000 people endorsing the idea of hiring her, as well as about 50 that thought that we shouldn't hire her specifically, or that they weren't opining on if we should hire her or not, but the process should have been an open national search, which we decided at the time would have been difficult to do at the beginning of COVID. So the other thing that we were, this is just my personal opinion, we needed to provide some level of stability in the district after all the tumult from the previous superintendent search and the superintendency that was cut short. And that I think we have provided some of that. We do have a person who is actually going to serve her entire term, her contract that she was hired to do, and retire out of the district. So, because it's the other thing that we have to do is we're attracting candidates to New Haven to want to be here, and not just because they can, but because they really want to be. And so, being able to show that, I think that personally, I would love this to be a unanimous decision of the board that's fully backed by the community, backed by the teachers, and the paras and other unions, that people are excited to work for a person who is excited to work for New Haven. That's what's going to be successful. moving forward. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alderman Miller.
I have a couple. Thanks for coming.
Certainly.
So we just received this proposal an hour ago, so I haven't looked through it in detail, but just from browsing, the process looks very, very similar to what was done by Hazard and Young in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the report that they put together based on all the community feedback. If you looked at this, you would say, oh, this was a great process, got a lot of feedback, we got a good leadership profile, but that obviously didn't work out. So I'm wondering if you could speak to what you, and to the extent that you know it, what other members of the board have learned from our previous processes that's informing this process.
So this is just my opinion but what my opinion is, people that are on the board that were part of that process, of the previous process, see that the previous process didn't go well and have no desire to relive the previous process. To this point, our meetings have been cordial. We're working together on this. This is a key thing. This is the key decision the board's going to be making anytime soon. And so I think people are working together on that. And I think that the newer members of the board, which also includes the mayor, are also people that are very interested in wide support for things. So that I don't think anybody is taking the lessons from the last search and going, let's do that again. It's like, okay, those things.
So what are those lessons, do you think?
What are those lessons? Personally, I think the biggest lesson is a fractured board making a decision that didn't have community support behind it. So a fractured board is one thing, but a fractured board that's going against community, the desire of the community for what they need in their, I mean, this is the person, it's for the people who work in the districts, this is their boss. For the people, students in the district, this is, for the parents, this is the future of their kids. And so we do have to take account of that. So fractured board, hey, it's New Haven. We know how to fight on the board and have and will again, I'm sure. But the fractured board that's also going against the will of the community, that went very poorly. So that's the lesson I think people got. And I hope that I'm correct in that.
Okay, thank you. Sort of building off of that, so the support of the community is really important. So then could you speak, sort of following off of Alder Smith's question, to the decision for the board to be the search committee? We have 19,000 kids in the district, and my understanding is only one member of the board is a current parent. So we have only one child's parent involved in this decision, not involved in, but making the final decision. We have over 2,000 educators in the district. None of them are involved in the final decision. Can you speak to why you think that's a good process?
So I don't recall, this is just my opinion here as well. I think part of the issue would be, in the end, a search committee is advisory to the decision-making person or body. So the search committee, if it involved more than the board, in the end is advisory to the board. In the end, it's going to be 4+ votes that make that decision. So the other issue when you have a search committee is then who's going to be on the search committee. And unlike stakeholder groups where you can get input from hundreds or thousands through surveys, tens of thousands of people, you can't put 10,000 people on a search committee. It also then becomes a very political process. This is just my opinion as to who is on the search committee. And so then you have questions as to how is the search committee going to be put together in that case? Will there need to be agreement from the entire board on that when you have board members that are very passionate in their views as to what should happen? And so then we're going to have arguments about who's going to be on the search committee. Personally, I'd rather have the arguments as to who's going to be the superintendent, because that's the key argument. So Personally, I think that this is a process with the stakeholder groups and the experience of the search firm can bring in a lot of different voices, but in the end also not extend the time that we have that we would like to get somebody in place. So.
Okay, I think there is a real conflict between the statement that you want the community's buy-in and absolutely no one from outside the board on the search committee.
It's certainly not rare that it's done that way in Connecticut. But I understand the criticism and I understand the disconnect or the view that it's a disconnect. But in the end, the board is the one that's going to make the decision. So,
but not necessarily shape the process. So the search committee is involved in shaping the process, which I think is an important distinction.
okay.
I also just wanted to ask about, I looked through this, I didn't see anything around some of the things we heard mentioned before, like performance tasks, having the candidate sort of write something initially to weed them, things like that. Is that just not yet detailed here? Is that not envisioned as potentially part of the plan? Or things that give you
I will say
more of a sense than just interviews and, you know.
Certainly, I did take notes when I heard about, the performance task, the candidate presentation using current district data that Dr. Anderson had mentioned, and I thought that sounds very good to me. The firm will enact whatever we want them to enact, so that if we did want to have a performance task, we would just need to say, we need to have this performance task. That this is an expectation that the finalists, the semifinalists will make a presentation about using current data about New Haven and not just tell us what they did, where they've been. That certainly could be part of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I did that particular idea I liked, but.
How about if we have Connecticut candidates? I think visiting the districts gives you a much more well-rounded sense of how people actually work, how they're perceived. It might not be possible for everybody, but I think it's something. Again, if you had a bigger search committee, you would have more people to do those things, but.
Right. I hear that. And then, based on my experience, we would then be discussing about whether or not those experiences, I can see where that would be useful. We certainly could, we haven't discussed whether or not we would be going to other places to observe something. We're certainly thinking it's built into the plan. People would be coming here. We're not going to hire somebody that hasn't set foot here, and perhaps more than once. Yeah, I mean, that would, I couldn't imagine that process, and I don't think they could imagine it either. But they, that was something that they discussed, that they would facilitate that if we did want to go there. And there's nothing that would preclude the board from saying, okay, let's send a group to this place and report back to us, and those people that go would not necessarily have to be board members.
Okay, I appreciate it. I just want to say, based on what I've seen, I don't see anything in here that looks like anything other than your standard fare, kind of some of that out of the box, more creative ideas that we heard earlier. And I think there's a lot of resources in the community for those kinds of things. And I hope if it doesn't come from the search firm, that there will be some effort from the board to do more than just what the search firm, does as part of its standard process.
I suggest if anybody wants things inserted into this process, it'd be really great if we knew about them in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, that's why we're doing this.
So that way we could, I'm taking some notes here. It's standard fare, but it is a standard process in a lot of different ways. And if there's things that we need to add into it, if there's things that need to happen to go beyond the standard or different twists on it that would fit best for the needs of New Haven, I certainly want that into the mix. But if we don't know about it, we can't put it in there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Before I go to Alder, you mentioned the next 2 weeks. I was wondering if you could tell us about the timeline for the design of the process. It seems like, on Monday there was, RFP was signed, or the contract was signed coming out of the RFP. And, in this RFP that we've received, there are a lot of, if the board chooses X, Y, and Z, so there's going to have to be decisions made about the design there. I was wondering if you could explain the timeline for when those decisions can be made.
Right, so some of that I don't know, because we've met with the firm, we've had conversations with them, but not since we've made the final decision. So we do need to, we have not booked the next meeting with them. I would assume it's going to be very soon. When I say 2 weeks, I'm thinking 2 weeks between board meetings. So we just had one. Jacinia did say she would be reporting on this again at the next one. We'll have regular progress reports at every board meeting. So I'm just thinking in terms of the time we have in the month of December to kind of get things nailed down so that we can go into the new year with things planned and things. So when I say 2 weeks, it's not to say, sorry, it's 2.5 weeks where we don't have to listen to you. I'm saying that's the time period when a lot of this planning stuff is going to be in place, where we're going to be inserting into this process what we want. The next thing is specifically about what we need for the superintendent search.
Thank you, that's helpful. Alder Herrera.
Well, it's, again, it's just like everything that Ms. Hanna, Ms. Miller saying, it's a lot to do to take the decision rightly in that time. And right now, I just want to say that, especially right now that you said in these 2 weeks, there are a lot to consider. And I will strongly suggest that since there's no parents majority in the board, that at least really trying to focus and set the research part to the schools, to the parents' meetings when they are involved, making clear what is the stress of time, the decision, what it is, and definitely go to every single school. And no content to the school principal, no content to the teacher. I would love to see that the parents' meetings, they are the ones who are there. Because it's very different to hear it at administration point of view, to hear it from the parents. What is the real concerns? And since we're narrowed down to getting the word spread, getting from them. Every single school, hearing from the parents, they're gonna have a point of view what they see in the school, and there will be a different board, and we have it. But again, that is community interested because the kids are in the school. So this is kind of pressure because I can feel like, uncomfortable. Such decision like this is made up only for a small group of people. And this group of people is gonna be by law or regardless of what we say, that's what it is. Okay, let's make these people work informed with the personal knowledge from parents, for needs of the community, and the end of the day, they are not interested. And I know pretty much a lot of schools, the parents are the soul of the school.
So yeah, I see the point, and I agree with you. That is a key thing, especially because it's if the process doesn't figure out ways to bring in input from people from each of the schools, it's not going to be it's going to be a failure of the process. The challenge is going to be some of the, with anything like this, those that have the time to be able to go to all the meetings can have an outsized influence over those that don't have the time because they're working multiple jobs, whatever, to have their views in that. So that's going to be an interesting thing. I am writing down, just as you were saying, all schools, and I'm interested in what the search firm has, when they go through the process with the stakeholder groups, how do they do that? When you have 41 schools, to be able that you're getting input from 41 groups and then the groups within that. So
that's my point. There's no time to do all of that.
Again, on the time, this is what we're shooting for. When we put together the RFP, we need to kind of put in a basic timeline. And now we need to then see, is that timeline reasonable? And if it's not reasonable, there's nothing that says we can't wait until
I don't try to punish you. I just want to bring my point on what is, how stressful it has huge what is getting information.
Thank you. Can you tell us, if you know, how many stakeholders that you currently have already that you decide to choose?
How many stakeholders?
Yes.
I mean, we haven't created a list of of stakeholders. So when I was saying earlier that there were some obvious stakeholders that would be like leadership of all of our unions that we work with, that's, you know, but we haven't sat down and said, we need to have this is the list. One of the next steps for the board is going to be who should be on the list of stakeholders that we go there. As far as stakeholders, there's 132,000 people in the city of New Haven. Those are the ultimate stakeholders, 20,000 students, etc. Those are the pool of stakeholders.
What I really want to make sure that we really look into the crucials, right? Because you have your teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely need to be a part of what's going on because they have to deal with the superintendent, basically within their schools, principals or whatever. I hope and pray that you contact the citywide parent team to make them a part of becoming a stakeholder to working with finding the next superintendent. Also the community, which my colleague mentioned about the parents also, in order to make sure that there's a fair and just search, regardless if the person come from out of town or whatever, that it be nonpartisan and that it be a change, because you don't want the same thing to happen that's going on now. We definitely need changes to happen, and everyone needs to feel safe. Teachers as well as the students and parents. Everyone needs to feel safe. Everyone needs to love, which once I've seen where there was a lot of teachers love going to school. And we want to bring that back again, where the teachers love where they're teaching at. When they love it, the kids love it. The kids love it, the parents love it. So we want to bring all of that back. It's important that you listen, being that you guys are making the final decisions to what the stakeholders are saying, and not to listen to what you want as a board member, but listen to the people. If that happens, then we have a great process to go. Thank you.
So just related to that, you did mention the teachers, and I know Leslie Blateau's here. I'm not just being nice because Leslie here is here. I have great confidence that the teachers, parents, and other folks are going to be making their voices very loud and clear in this process. I personally am, it's the instructional core. You have the teachers, you have the students, and you have your curriculum, and that's what everything else is supposed to serve that. And so, yeah, I'm personally a superintendent that's going to have the respect of the teachers is extremely key. Personally, I think it's amongst the top priorities for the position. Obviously, the person also has to be able to administrate large budget, many programs, many schools, but and I'm very confident, and they've already been reaching out to make sure that they are part of this process. And I've not heard anything that says that they shouldn't be, or that we won't.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that everyone listens to every group, so that it can be a fair process, so that everyone can be happy. Like I said, I understand that you guys make the last decision, but the decision should be based on what the people want, not what the individuals on the board want.
I fully agree.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Any other questions from members of the committee? I have a question. I was wondering if you could talk, if you have a sense of, so as the process has been explained to us, it seems like the firm is doing a lot of legwork, and then obviously the board is going to be making the final decision. It seems like maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect there, because the search firm is going to be doing some of the preliminary interviews. They're going to be the ones talking to focus groups. And I'm wondering, given that the board is going to be making the final decision, it seems like it would make sense for them to, make sure that they know what the focus groups are looking for, and that they have, been in all the interviews. So I was wondering if you could talk about how you expect the information that the firm gathers through the process is going to be communicated to the board, or how the board is going to be involved throughout the process, so that they,
So some key things that I did like about their process is they are, and I know that was a criticism of the last search firm that was used, which was not this one, several years ago, was that all the information that they were, like all the candidates, that information was not shared with the board. And this, they do talk about, they will be sharing all the names of the people. They will rank them based on, in their opinion, this is the ones that best match what the board and the community and the stakeholders say that they want. But we will be able to see all that information and be able to, they made it very clear to us, and it's my expectation is that they're advisory to the process. They want us to have the information. They'll be sharing the information with the entire board. There was a criticism of the last times. Some information was shared with some board members and not others. They talk about they've done enough of these. They don't play the games that others might play. So the board will have all that information and can then adjust. It's not like they don't give us the list, then we can't talk to those people. We can push back on this, reevaluate, have them talk to folks again, interview whoever.
Thank you. And following up on that, do you expect that the firm is being hired in part to assess what the community wants for the next superintendent, and then they're gonna talk to the stakeholders and then come up with an assessment of what the community is hoping for in superintendent? It feels like that assessment maybe should be made public so that we can, as a community, understand what the criteria are, what criteria are being used in the selection process. I was wondering.
So I believe they specifically say that when they pull together that information, there's a written report to be shared with the public.
So that's exactly what I have from 2017, that same report that was done by the previous firm.
Okay. So that they have a similar thing where they will pull that information together. I have every expectation we will make it public.
Should be. Thank you.
Because if it's wrong, we need to know, or if it's not full featured enough, or if we've missed some voices that need to be more prioritized, then the public can then be able to speak up on it.
Absolutely. Any other questions from members of the committee? Big Rossett, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we're now going to move to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Missy, do we have has anybody signed up to speak? There should be a sign-up list over in the corner over there. First, we have Jonathan Berryman. You could start with your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. I am Jonathan Berryman. I live at 55 Walnut Street, number 7, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511. So I am Dr. Jonathan Q. Berryman, New Haven resident and NHBS teacher. I sit here tonight and I'm elated to hear that there will be a national search for our next superintendent. And I am here really just imploring that it be a real search. And I say that because I've been a part of the superintendent searches since Dr. Nail retired. And we have gone through many motions and have had great expectations and have had 2 buyouts. So I come with that concern. The proverbial admonition that where there is no vision, the people perish, forewarns us of the imminent fate of the NHPS if you as elected officials and we as a community fail to get it right this time. And I am concerned about the 4-month timeline, that's not enough time. We deserve more. We need more time. It takes longer than that to pull our community together, to really analyze what was said, to make sure all stakeholders have been at the table. And that's what I mean by a real search. 4 months is not it. Let's just be honest about that. We need more time. Our student achievement data, chronic absenteeism rate, and the mass exodus of talented educators from our district serve as evidence of the ill health of the NHPS. If this district were a medical patient based on our condition, there's no doubt that we would quickly be admitted and held for observation as a room in the ICU and life support equipment are ready for our stay. Yet, our issues are fixable with the right leadership. If we are to survive, live, and thrive, we now need a superintendent with the right vision for the NHPS, not just any old vision. All of our superintendents have had a vision, but our recent buyout rate has let us know that some of them have had the wrong vision for us. Being familiar with New Haven and Connecticut is not enough. Though I appreciate the urging to look locally, we need to do more. Unlike Tina Turner's private dancer for money, for whom any old music would do, that is not our testimony. Any old superintendent will not do for New Haven, and let's be honest about that. We need a superintendent who has the calling, not just the qualifications to lead us. For the love of our students, please do not engage in a process that chooses a superintendent who lacks the anointing that's supposed to go with the appointing. Though we absolutely and unequivocally deserve a superintendent who holds an earned doctorate from an accredited institution and who already holds the proper certification to serve in the position, most of all, we really need another John Dowd. In whatever race or gender that candidate now appears, we need someone who is smart enough and wise enough to know what needs to be done to lead this district, and then bold enough to go ahead and lead it. If that candidate is already here, then a national search will reveal it. If we need to bring in someone fresh from outside of the state, a national search will reveal that too. As a resident of New Haven and a veteran educator in the NHPS, I'm actually tired. I'm tired of struggling every day to make a great system out of something that could be great with the right leadership. But because we struggle in that area, we can't get there. Yet perishing because we have no vision is not in my plan, but voting is. I hope that as officials in this city, putting our children at risk because of a lack of vision is not on your agenda, that it's not on our board's agenda, it's certainly not on a 4-month agenda. A real superintendent search, a national search, a fully funded search, a real search is needed to achieve what we need. And I appreciate your line of questioning on this evening to make sure it happens.
Thank you, Mr. Berryman.
Thank you. Can you leave your testimony with staff? Thank you.
Up next is Lauren Anderson.
Hello again, I'm Lauren Anderson, 946 Elm Street. So I wasn't necessarily planning to come back and say anything. It's a hard act to follow, also, I will say. And I just second everything that Jonathan said much more eloquently than I probably could, and certainly than I would have. I think I'm glad that the repeated mention of the national search when the initial speaker talked about looking first internally. I don't think I think it really is a both and. Like, the national search is crucial in the very way that Jonathan just spoke about. I also will say, you know, I volunteered to be on the Board of Education multiple times, and I'm currently the board chair of the Free Public Library. And very happily, and I absolutely believe in the value of search firm, which is why I made that comment about, you know, New London's specific situation was a specific one that led it to not contract one, and that's not what I would advise here. It's like the library is currently doing a search. We will be working with the search firm. I'm a little bit crestfallen to hear that it's this McPherson Jacobson firm, because that firm is the firm that in 2014 was working with New London and gave New London candidates with a candidate with a falsified credential that then had to withdraw a contract. And I know this in part, there's a Hartford Current op-ed that a piece that was written about it that I, at the time, was a community member and there were some fishy things going on. It was like community members, like who actually outed that to the Current. And I wrote an op-ed about the sort of sacredness of the search process and the role of boards in being able to make decisions unencumbered by intervention. In that particular case, I do think that the firm was disserving the district in part because of some other political dynamics that had to do with the special master that was overseeing things at the time. Now, I want to say that not to cause a whole horrible, that was the first I heard about that firm, was just its mentioning in this context. I do know they work with a whole bunch of different consultants, and the consultant teams might vary in quality. So if the move is to work with this particular firm, I certainly hope that the situation of New London will be mentioned to them, so they will be reminded of the work that they did not do well there for an urban school district in this state, because they need to do way better. Because I saw the name, I did try to figure out, I don't see them listing any other Connecticut references. That worries me a bit, regardless of how wonderful the actual consultants that would be assigned to this search would be. And I hope that, again, if moving forward with that entity, there will be real commitment to figuring out who are the particular consultants that are going to be working with the board, what is their experience in building a kind of pool in this region for a job of this nature. And then the last thing I do want to say is just about the role of people who are not just the Board of Education. I'm pretty crestfallen to hear that that's the entirety of the search committee, because I do think there are lots of other people in our city who could play a really crucial role, both in being members of the search committee, but also as being carriers of particular kinds of experiential and content-related expertise, but also just as trusted members of the community who are going to lend credibility to the process. And I think it's a missed opportunity to not have mechanisms by which they could be more inclusively engaged. And so I'm happy to answer questions or just be a resource in whatever way I can, but it did feel important to mention those pieces of information.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The next up is Leslie Blanteau.
Good evening, everyone. Leslie Blanteau, 410 Greenwich Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut. I was planning to come tonight to listen and learn. As folks know, but I'll say it for the record, I'm also the president of the New Haven Federation of Teachers, New Haven Public School teacher, and New Haven Public School parent. And I really wanted to come to hear about the best practices that you all convened for us tonight. So you convened folks here, and I want to thank you for that, to highlight the best practices from Stanford, from New London, lessons learned from New Haven. And I just want to recognize the significance of that task that the Board of Alders Education Committee has done. Thank you. Thank you also, Alder Smith, for your repeated commitment to the role that teachers and paraprofessionals can and should be playing in this process. It's clear that you understand the importance of that. I think it's also clear that Board of Education member Wilcox understands that. Nevertheless, here we are. where we just learned officially that the committee to decide the next superintendent is a closed committee of just Board of Education members. And I'm wondering how this committee feels about that. I'm wondering how the alders at large feel about that. And I think it's clear how the people who showed up at this meeting are feeling as we process that news. Both President Heiklis Williams of the Paraprofessional Union and myself reached out to the mayor, the president of the Board of Ed, and the entire Board of Ed yesterday to let them know our eagerness to be involved in this process. We believe the next superintendent should have a demonstrated commitment to public education. We believe they should understand and have evidence that they will commit to developmentally appropriate and research-based best practices for our students, for our teachers, for our schools. They need a demonstrated commitment to democratic decision-making, and they need a demonstrated commitment to collaboration with all stakeholders. I'm worried about the democratic decision-making piece because the committee to decide the next superintendent is a closed committee that, as you pointed out, Alder Miller, has one current public school parent on it. You know, there are many New Haven Federation of Teacher members and paraprofessional union members who are public school parents and grandparents, and we could definitely kill two birds with one stone in that way, yet we are not. So, you know, like I said, I wanted to come here tonight to listen, but I felt compelled to share, given some of the ways that things have unfolded. I'm going to remain optimistic because that's how I continue to do this work every day, by believing that a commitment to transparency and a commitment to a process where we do engage with our community is going to yield someone who is committed to public ed, developmentally appropriate practices, democratic decision-making and collaboration. And I'm hopeful that that person is going to land in New Haven in the coming months. And I think it will be a result of the ongoing involvement of folks like you, folks like the people who showed up tonight, and folks in our community who are able to really express what is going on in our schools, what our needs are, and how we can continue to support teachers, students, and educators throughout the city in the best interest of our students. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next up is Jessica Light. If you could start by giving your name and address for the record.
My name is Jessica Light. I live at 1370 Elegy Grasso. I am a teacher. I'm also a parent, and I want to speak as a parent tonight. Well, I guess it's difficult to separate the two roles. I'll say that in the past, I have spoken to the Board of Education, and the Board of Education is teachers' bosses. To be very clear about it, if you want honest input from teachers, the search committee needs to not be made entirely of the people that have the decision to hire and fire them. You will not get honest feedback for most teachers in that situation. That aside, as a parent, I want to make sure that the people that work in my children's school feel that they are included in the process. I must say, when I saw the flyer for this meeting on Facebook, I was very excited because I thought I was coming to the beginning of a process. And to hear mid-meeting that we have 2 weeks to come and figure out a subcommittee of who gets to be listened to was incredibly disheartening. I, like Leslie, had absolutely no intention of speaking. I was here to hear what process and exciting things we were going to be doing. And it feels like now it's already been decided, and that while we can give input to an agency that will talk to the search committee that then decides, that sounds like theater to me. It doesn't sound like real input.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Next up is Lisa Bassani.
Hi, thank you. Lisa Bassani, 11 Nelson Street in New Haven. I'm also a parent of 2 girls in Nathan Hale School. Deeply invested in this. My kids aren't going to private school. They're going to be in public school here until until they graduate high school. I'd also like to echo what has been previously said about a closed process with just the Board of Ed members. I think this is a really strange signal, I have to say, to any potential candidates too, that the board doesn't believe they need any outside expertise. I think to start this process, trying to recruit somebody fantastic to lead our district by saying, the 7 of us know everything we need to know. We don't need Leslie, we don't need other parents, we don't need any outside expertise. I just think it's from the gate is just weird. It's just, and especially after having such a deeply flawed and frankly traumatic process that landed Carol Burks, to start this now with this signal to any potential candidates is wrong. It's wrong. I don't think it's defensible to say, well, we'd have a hard time figuring out who would be on that committee. Look, that's not plausible. It's not reasonable. We can 7 people can agree, okay, we're going to work out, and there's some kind of negotiation who might best represent. Obviously you're not going to have 300 people on a committee, but you can have 4 or 5 really talented, smart people. So I just think we're starting this off after having completely crashed and burned twice. We're starting off on the wrong foot. So I also want to just echo the comments that I think the questions from all the alders were really good. I think they were right on point. But I just, like Leslie, I think we're all just, I want to stay hopeful. I want to stay hopeful that we're going to find somebody great. We need to. We need to look outside this district. We need a fresh vision. We need someone with a real vision. We haven't had somebody with a real deep vision that's coming in, that can look around at the personnel we have in certain roles and assess whether those are the people that should be in those roles. So there's a lot of work for this person to do. And so I hope that the board will hear the comments today, and maybe take a different turn to start, I hope, and invite a few really key, accomplished, smart, thoughtful community members into this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ashley Stockton.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ashley Stockton. I live at 209 Willow Street, New Haven. Thank you for having this meeting tonight. And thank you, Mr. Wilcox, for coming tonight and sharing. I, like others, was not intending to speak tonight, but have been really surprised at what I've heard tonight and just want to share some thoughts with you and also with you, Mr. Wilcox. I know it's a little strange, but if you can help in any way communicate this back to the Board of Ed. Just jotted down some notes, so forgive me too if I ramble. The first thing I just wanted to talk about is process. Alderman already talked a lot about process, and I think currently Board of Ed meetings are still being held only over Zoom. They're not hybrid. Members of the public are not permitted to attend those meetings in person. We can see that all the employees of the executive team are sitting in the same room together. We can see them talking to each other. We can see them sharing papers and communicating. We can see that, but we're not allowed to be in that room. I understand that Mr. Wilcox is here as a representative and he's giving us the best information he can, but we don't know if any of this is going to happen in person or in a hybrid fashion. Board President Rivera, when asked if Board of Ed meetings would resume to in-person or a hybrid model, said it is her decision. She has the right to say, no, they will be Zoom, and so she is making that decision unilaterally, regardless of public asks, regardless of public desire to be in community, to see who's in the room, to be able to literally make eye contact with folks. It's strange, it's disconcerting, it's unsettling, it's isolating, and it's a red flag to me about the willingness of the Board of Ed to transparently engage with the community. And so I don't mean this as a disrespect to Mr. Wilcox in any way. I think the idea of transparency is complete theater. And I feel insulted that it's even being used when we won't even have Board of Ed meetings in person that we can attend. So I wanted to say that first. Second, I find it bizarre that Mr. Wilcox is the only Board of Ed member in this room right now. Like, I don't understand. I too, like Jessica Light, was so excited when I saw that this meeting was happening. I was like, all right, and we can come in person and we can see one another, and we can see our neighbors and our community members and these people who we email and sit behind machines, we can see them. I emailed you today and now I'm looking at you, right? That feels good. There are no Board of Ed members here with the exception of Mr. Wilcox to even hear what the public has to say. Yet they are the search committee. Feels strange, doesn't feel good. I also just want to say that, and I'm going to say this carefully because we all get to make our own decisions. There are currently 7 members on the Board of Ed who get to vote. As has been stated tonight, one of them has a child enrolled in New Haven Public Schools. One. There are other children of board members who exist who are enrolled in other schools. Those are decisions their families have made that are better for their family. I find it really disconcerting as a New Haven resident, a parent of 2 students in New Haven Public Schools who I have to fight and advocate for every day to get special education services, to get accesses to courses, to get athletic facilities, to get anything they need. It's almost a full-time job to advocate for them. I find it very disconcerting to know that people who are going to pick the next leader of our schools that my kids go to, but not their kids. Their kids don't go to our school. They're going to, those 7 people are going to make that decision. Just want to go on the record that that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel representative of New Haven parents. Couple other quick notes. I don't want to take everyone's time too much. Just want to say that if you guys watch the Board of Ed meetings on YouTube or Zoom, you know that there are 2 student representatives who are phenomenal. Phenomenal. From my view, and I don't miss a Board of Ed meeting, the student representatives demonstrate the most leadership on the Board of Ed. They are the most connected to the community. They are the best listeners. They are responsive. They have a vision, by the way. They have specific asks. They try their best to hold accountable, right? They represent, they're incredibly intelligent, dynamic human beings. They don't get to vote. And I don't even know if they're going to be on the search committee, but I would go on record saying I think they should chair the search committee. I mean, like, they're phenomenal. So I really hope that they are on the search committee. And I just want to add really quickly, Lauren Anderson, I don't even know if she's still here. I don't know her. I've never met her. I've seen her because I think she owns a bookstore in town. I've seen her in the paper. But listening to her to speak tonight, if our city chooses to not use her as a resource, I think that that's a big swing and a miss. Like, she's here, she's offering her expertise, she's offering her experience. Like, please, I don't know how the authors and the Board of Ed work together, but this idea of these 7 folks being on the search committee only, it just doesn't feel right or good. And I think I'm just saying what everyone else has already said. So I'll wrap it up, and I thank you guys, and I thank everyone who's here for your time. And I thank Mr. Wilcox a lot. And I just want to say, like, we're looking at the future. We're not looking at the past. So we have also this tendency on the Board of Ed to just like circle the drain about what happened in the 1980s and the 1990s and what happened 15 years ago and what we all knew. It's 2022. Like, please, can we look forward, not backward? Thanks.
Thank you so much for this information.
Thank you.
Next, Tom Goldenberg. And he's the last person on my list, if there's anybody else. I think Misty, do you have a sign-up sheet still?
Somebody else who wants to sign up.
Thank you. I'm trying to be brief. Just want to express utmost respect for everyone that's
Start with your name and address.
Oh, yes, sorry. Tom Goldenberg, 324 Maple Street, New Haven. So just again I'll try to keep it brief. I think what everyone said is just brings up a lot of emotion, a lot of thoughts. So echoing a lot of what people said, just 3 points I would like to make. The first thing, Mr. Wilcox mentioned that in the discussion of when the last time that there was a national search, that they do not want to repeat the outcome of that. And when asked by Alder Miller, what were the lessons learned, the response was simply, we don't want to repeat that again. I would call upon the board and to actually reflect on what were the mistakes that were made and put it in writing. Because it is concerning to me that after an incident like that there is not a actual response other than we don't want to do that again. So point number one. Point number two, it was great that we got to hear from 2 people involved with the New London search. I've had the honor of working with the New London superintendent, Cynthia Ritchie. She's a phenomenal person, and that city is very lucky to have her. So I would say, given the lessons from that process that we heard from, particularly from Lauren Anderson, I would just echo, please include her in the search committee and take to heart some of those lessons, including behavioral interviews and some of the other techniques that they used. And just to build on that, the last point, yeah, I do find it concerning that not just that the search committee is limited to members of the board, 7 members, but when asked about how it would work, Mr. Wilcox, you mentioned that some members would not be able to attend several of the requisite meetings, and so an even smaller amount of people will have a higher amount of influence over the process. There are a lot of people in this room that will attend those meetings. So if the board members are too busy to attend the meetings in this process, I would call on them to assign people that can and that are passionate about this, because there's a lot of energy and a lot of passion in this room right now that people do want to help, and people have relevant expertise, and they should be included. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
testimony.
you for testifying.
I think maybe we have Stephen Cousin.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Cousin, and my address is 105 Lowen Avenue. I'm a father of 2 children. Right now, they are in the 4th and kindergarten at Davis Street School. And I've been here since June of 2013. Right now, we are on our 4th superintendent, soon to be 5th next year. You're looking at 5 superintendents in the 10-year span. And according to what the ladies talked about in Stanford, where normally the average lifespan is 3.5 years of a superintendent, we're well below that mark. I want to caution this board, the Board of Education in the city of New Haven, that the means always have to justify the end. And having been a part of the former search, when Dr. Burks was here, there's a lot of missteps that did occur. Number one, community involvement was way too late, where we actually extended the process because there weren't any internal candidates that were finalists, not even those in the state of Connecticut. And they extended the process out to actually essentially redo it just to get more candidates within our state to actually be a finalist. And then near the very end of our process, we had 3 finalists that came up. That's when the entire community came forward. I believe it was in Fairhaven at a school. And each candidate presented themselves to the group. And it turned into a popularity contest where there were those who made signs, those who were cheering, jeering, what have you. And the most important thing I noticed was that there were competing interests on the board in terms of who was going to control that person. We have to be careful. Whose agenda are we going to serve here? And I'm going to be real. We have a mayoral election coming up. You don't think that's not going to play a part into this search? The only agenda that we should have is being about our kids. Not about the race, ethnicity, color, but who understands our kids, who can empathize with them, of why they're not coming to school, maybe because they're hungry, or because they're not wearing the right clothes, or maybe because they have to take care of their siblings, and actually maybe their mother or father have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to put food on the table. If we don't have a superintendent, and if we can't come together now, whatever agenda that we may have, whatever competing interests we may have, if we're not willing to put that aside for the sake of our children, we've already talked about losing 1 generation due to the pandemic. We stand to lose another generation if we do not get this right. So the only agenda we should have, let's learn from our mistakes. Let's really try to put together a true search committee, but let's really decide who's going to make that appointment. Is it going to be the mayor? Is it going to be the board of alders? These are conversations that we need to have now. I don't know if we're going to get there till March, but I want to make sure that the means always justify the ends, or we're going to be here another 3 years later, having the very same conversation and talk about another buyout that we're going to read about being independent. We have the time now to get this right. Let's put everything aside. With all of our issues that we have in the educational system, only we have the power to actually set this record straight. But it's up to us. Any egos, any pride, put it aside. Let's be about our children, and let's have that conversation beginning tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Mr. Wilcox.
So again, Matt Wilcox, 1135 Forest Road. So another tough person to follow, but I certainly loved hearing all the comments tonight, and especially taking the comments to heart from Reverend Cousins there. I did want to clear up one thing because I think I poorly communicated something. When I say that the board is the search committee, we currently are the search committee. The board did that in the process of being able to select the search firm. We are now at the next part of that, which is all the other steps, all the other decisions that need to be made that this search firm is going to assist us in making. So we have not had a conversation where we have said, will we expand this or will we not expand this? After what I'm hearing tonight, I'm certainly going to be recommending we should make that an actual decision, talk about it, and then move from there. I'm also hearing a lot of other things that I also want to bring into the mix there about how we how the stakeholder groups and how we're going to be listening. So I did want to clarify that the two things I really wanted to clarify. Nothing is set in stone at this point. And you can certainly make it known to the rest of the board members that you want, demand, need, recommend, whatever language you want to use, that the process needs to be expanded. As somebody who's currently in that process, that it would also be great if the call for expanding it included people who should be on the mix there, because that'll be the next question. So it's bringing the solution to the problem. So should be expanded, and you should tap Reverend Cousins again as an example. So I think that would be something that I would recommend. And I'm certainly going to pass that information on. It might even be that I'm not actually going to be in part of the actual committee. My turn's actually up in 32 days or so. So if you want board members that are different than who's on there, there's an opportunity. I imagine the mayor right now is making those decisions. Say we need to have a board member with children currently in the system as opposed to a board member whose children graduated from the system. And every year is a year beyond where they graduated. So I think making your needs, wants known into the process. It is a public process. What I'm hearing is we want to be transparent. And I spoke again tonight because I was thinking I was closing that off. The decisions are made, the fix is in. We're going to just railroad somebody through, and I don't get that sense from anybody that I work with on the board. It's certainly not my view of what should happen, and it's quite opposite. My only agenda is for this to work better. That's been my agenda all along. Trying not to have, with all the different groups and factions and interests in New Haven, there's a lot of challenges there, but I am hoping, to echo what Reverend Cousins was saying, this is one thing we can come together on, because again, we are attracting a superintendent who wants to be here, as well as attracting and building community support so that superintendent can be successful. So we don't have another superintendent in 18 months or 2 years, that somebody that can serve for multiple terms and can put their stamp on New Haven, as well as allow New Haven to create the system that it needs and deserves. So I did want to clarify that. This is the very, when you look at the timeline of things, we are at the very first steps, and everything is can change. So thank you very much.
You're all right, if Alder Smith asks a question, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Olcott. Thank you for clarifying it, but I want to get to the last step, to be clear. And that question is, who makes the final decision?
Who makes the final decision?
Yes.
I mean, it's by law, by charter, a majority vote of the Board of Education makes the final decision. So that's the way the process would work. And that's the technical and legal one. And the board members can cast their vote based on personal agendas or agendas to have the best person for the job available to come here. I'm hearing people want the latter. I'm a realist. There's going to be a lot of calls for it to be, we need to have this person for whatever reasons because it'll work better with some groups of people. And I'm hoping we can continue on with that. That's what I'm hearing now, is that there is a commitment for a great superintendent for the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Olcott. Thank you for listening to the people tonight.
Of course.
Thank you for your testimony. Did you have a question?
Just comment.
We'll have discussion now. Next, we have Sarah Levine.
Hi, Sarah Levine, 2094 Chapel Street. I'm a teacher and a parent, and I have 2 kids in the New Haven Public Schools. I'm going to be really fast because what everybody said was great. I want to thank all of you for your really awesome and pointed questions. And thank Mr. Wilcox for coming back up here and really reconsidering. I love that he was listening to what we were saying. The one thing I think that hasn't been said kind of enough is that right now teacher morale is low. We have our new contract, which I think excited teachers and is bringing people kind of back into like, this is okay, we're important to the city and we want to do well. But if we're left, if as teachers we're left out of this decision-making process, it's going to lower morale. It's going to make teachers angry and it's not going to be a positive force. When Dr. Brooks was appointed, the teachers didn't want her for the most part. And I think that's a big part of what the problem was that regardless of what she did, the tide was already against her. And so it's so important that the board works with the teachers and make sure that the teachers have a say in what we're doing and who they're picking, because otherwise I think it's going to become a big problem, because at the end of the day, the teachers are the ones that are working with our students every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? I'll say again, do we have any other members of the public wishing to testify? And a third time, do we have any members of the public wishing to testify? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we close the public portion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I just want to ask for Wilcox. And you say that the main goal that the Board of Education are making is make a superintendent that want to be here. Please make a note that in this list, there are people that are already here and they want to be part of it. Experienced, passionate, looking at the back, wonderful, hardworking to hearing that sharp news that we got today. And that will be lovely in the Board of Education considering if they are experienced in that passion. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Alderman.
I wonder if as a board we can, or as a committee, we can make a recommendation to the Board of Ed about who we think, just categories of people that we think absolutely need to be included in the search committee. I would say minimally the teachers union, the paraprofessionals union, the board of alders, a parent, a community member, maybe more of some of those categories. But those 5 seem to me just the bare minimum of who we need to have represented on that committee.
Maybe yes.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion? Alderman.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important. First, I want to commend Mr. Wilcox for coming up and listening to the cries of the people. I think it's important that we should have involved into this committee a bunch of people that really do care about the children, the community, and the staff. That's why I basically stress that teachers need to be involved in this search. They should be a major stakeholder, as well as the parents, which is the citywide parent team and community. In order for us to have a good superintendent, as one stated, that they have to have a vision for this city. They have to have a vision for the school system. They have to have a vision for the people. And I think that's what we're lacking. But most importantly, I think it's important that maybe we can make a recommendation that the Board of Ed to host, if they're one meeting for community, that it be host not on Zoom, but in person, so that the parents, residents, teachers have the opportunity to sit here and hear. As I said, they're involved in different things. You see them out at different events. You see them back and forth in the meetings. There's no reason why they cannot come out and to be in public, to give that respect to the parents, to let them know that they do care about them, and that their vote they can see them, these people vote properly. I think it's important so I'm asking if we could make a recommendation to the board president, because I would like to see it in person. We meet in person. We've been meeting in person after the pandemic. There's no reason, 7 of them is 30 of us. And we're here in this chambers, every Board of Alders meeting, so there's no reason why they can't meet in person. And we do have underlying conditions also. So I just want to thank all of those that did come out. I hear you, I hear all of them, and I know we all hear them also. And thanks for hosting this meeting, Chair. I really appreciate it. It's very important. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, Owner Smith. I would just add, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Our presenters from New Haven and from elsewhere, Board of Education member Will Cox, we really appreciate you being here tonight. And I think that what we heard loud and clear is that we need an open process. The community wants to be involved. This is an incredibly important decision for the future of our city, our kids, and we need to make sure that everybody's engaged in the process and has the opportunity to weigh in as we select a new leader of our school system. So we have a motion on the table that's been seconded. All in favor of closing the public portion of the hearing, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The public portion of the meeting is closed. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.